Crossing the Trash+Sweet pet double Cleanliness+Palace dough and house dough, Yunsheng had already lived a life of slacking off and fishing, but unexpectedly, a plane crash turned into Gu Yunsheng, the illegitimate daughter of the Prime Minister's mansion, whose father did not care about his mother's death. My eldest sister wants her to make a fool of herself, so I'm sorry to have learned some musical instruments. My mother-in-law wants to poison and frame someone, but coincidentally, she has also learned some traditional Chinese medicine. There's nothing I can do to besiege my home, I'm really sorry. I've even learned some ancient martial arts. As soon as his vest was about to fall off, someone unexpectedly brought several more vests to Yunsheng. Yunsheng's eyes lit up. Since that's the case, don't blame her for being arrogant. All the scumbags and lowly women should kneel down to this princess. And someone. Princess, don't kill anyone in all directions. I miss you. Chapter 1. Sheng Luo. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Brain storage area. In the 26th year of Lin Feng, the night was deep and the dew was heavy, and a thunderbolt suddenly appeared in the sky. It's late autumn, 10 miles away, the wind rustles. Yunsheng shivered before slowly waking up. Before she could lift her heavy eyelids, someone stabbed her hard in the back. The sudden and intense pain made Yunsheng's eyes turn black and his body twitch. Miss Eyre, it was Madam who asked us to take your life. Who made Xiangye have the intention to pick you up? As a little ghost, don't find the wrong person. Alright, what should I say? A rural ant is afraid of what she will do, so if she throws her down, she will be crushed to pieces. Even the Prince of Yen may not accept her. Yunsheng's body was lifted high, and by the time she regained consciousness, she had already been lifted by two people and suspended in mid-air on the cliff. Underneath her was a towering cliff, and in the pitch-black night, she couldn't see the bottom. Aren't you on a trip? What's the situation now? It's getting more intense. The gears of fate cannot spin aimlessly. The invisible force of the rapid fall tugged at her body but did not hinder her inner turmoil. Her ears were filled with strong wind sounds, making it difficult for her to breathe and causing a splitting headache. A large amount of memories flooded into her mind without permission, with tinnitus and dizziness in her ears, and in a daze, she seemed to have become someone else. Gu Yunsheng, the illegitimate daughter of Prime Minister Gu of Lin Feng Kingdom. More than a decade ago, Prime Minister Gu Shao picked up a good son outside and lost his memory. He was accepted as Qin's aunt by Prime Minister Gu Shao, who was highly favored and even promoted to a concubine. Aunt Qin became pregnant as soon as she entered the mansion, and by chance, she saved the Empress Dowager by giving birth prematurely. She had a son on the same day as Zhao Fangji, the legitimate daughter of Zhao Fangji, Gu Yunman, and the illegitimate daughter of Aunt Qin, Gu Yunsheng. The Empress Dowager bestowed a favor on her daughter, allowing her to enter the palace and accompany the princess and prince in their studies. On the day of their birth, a Taoist came to the Prime Minister's mansion and cut off the lives of two women. One woman was a noblewoman from Tianyi, while the other was a lonely star from the heavenly Shah. The Prime Minister's mansion didn't pay much attention, but 10 days later, Gu Yunsheng's aunt passed away. 1 month later, the illegitimate eldest son of the Prime Minister's mansion fell into the water and became a fool. The Gu family finally became concerned and speculated that Gu Yunsheng was the one who hit the mark with evil. Prime Minister Gu was persuaded by Zhao Fangji, fearing that Gu Yunsheng's bad fate would harm the Gu family when he entered the palace. In the end, he decided to entrust Gu Yunsheng to his aunt's personal maid and take him back to the Gu family's hometown to take care of. This incident lasted for more than a decade. And 6 years later, the person who entered the palace was replaced by Gu Yunman. The Empress Dowager and the Emperor were not biological children, and the Empress Dowager had already passed away. The Emperor did not really care who it was, allowing the Gu family to fish in troubled waters. Gu Yunman and the prince and princess studied together until they were 13 years old, and Gu Yunsheng was about to stop. However, because there was only one dilapidated branch of the Gu family in his hometown, he knew that Gu Yunsheng had been lost and was unwilling to take good care of him. He casually betrothed Qin Ant's personal maid to a farmer, and even threw Gu Yunsheng away with him. These memories flashed before her like a movie, and she finally realized that she had traveled through time. Just as she clarified her situation, she heard a thud, and the sound of the wind in her ears disappeared, replaced by the sudden influx of lake water into her nose. After finally recovering her normal life and going on a trip, did God choose her to become the chosen child? Arranging such a low-probability plane crash crossing event for her is mainly a shock. Thank you, my goodness, that means it would be nice to switch people. Yunsheng didn't forget to go crazy at this moment in his heart, thinking wildly. Struggling, he grabbed a tree trunk and resurfaced, thanks to this thing, otherwise he wouldn't have died in the hands of a person, but in the water. She choked on 2 sips of water and gasped for breath, shaking off the wet hair that covered her eyes. Only then did she realize that she was holding onto the leg of a man in black, whose eyes widened and his face turned pale and lifeless. He was truly a dead person. Otherwise, she was chosen by heaven and sent a dead person to save her before she was about to drown. Good person, no, good heavens. Looking behind the man in black, Yunsheng finally noticed that there was a handsome man naked with sharp eyes staring at her. Is it because of Longyang's goodness that he killed someone? Yunsheng silently swallowed his saliva, pretending that he didn't see it. He should have had enough time to run now. Chapter 2. Yuanqi. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yunsheng chuckled twice, sorry to bother you, I'm leaving now. As he spoke, Yunsheng was about to leave. Unexpectedly, the man's body quickly grabbed her arm. If it weren't for me holding him, you would have died. How could I hold him and it's getting heavier? You want to run away and deliver the message. Leave your life behind. Yunsheng's body paused, and this meant she was going to die. Her face darkened as she turned back to hit his chest. Just then, a sound came from her. Master, are you okay? Yunsheng's hand slid down his body, sinking into the water. He pulled out the plain silver hairpin from his head and pressed it against the man's lifeline. As long as this man dares to expose himself a bit, she will make him cut off his offspring and see if it's faster for them or for herself to penetrate. The man's eyes were dizzy and gloomy, his face slightly flushed, and the veins on his forehead erupted, as if he was about to bite his back teeth. Damn woman, how could she hold a sharp weapon against his position? No problem, the assassins left behind before have been resolved. Mu Jingyuan clenched his hand and pursed his thin lips with anger. Xianbai looked at the black-clothed man who had died floating on the pond water before he felt relieved. Master, once you wash it up, let's hurry back to the mansion. The man exclaimed, and Xianbai was about to go into the pond to retrieve the dead person. Master, I'll throw him somewhere else, don't hinder you from cleaning up, he said unexpectedly. The man shouted angrily, stop. Just leave the person here, don't worry. Xianbai was a bit confused by the sudden reprimand. Isn't the master a cleanliness fetish? That's why I can't stand the dirty clothes on my body after being ambushed before, so I came to wash myself in this pool of water. This dead person is soaking in the water, shouldn't the master hate it very much? That's it. If possible, men don't want to soak in the pool with dead people, especially if there's not only one dead person, but also a woman. I really want to pull out the woman underwater and kill her at this moment. Yunsheng seemed to know his thoughts, as if she couldn't hold her breath anymore. The sharp and cold weapon was once again pasted towards his good brother, and the man's face turned gloomy and red again. Seeing that the master's face was getting worse and worse, Xianbai hesitated and wanted to speak, but was interrupted by the man. Step back. With a sharp shout, Xianbai trembled and repeatedly took leave. He didn't dare to linger any longer. The master's unpredictable personality made him afraid that he would die in the next second. Get out. Upon hearing that the man was going to be drunk, Yunsheng stopped bothering and quickly took big breaths out of the water. Her long black hair drifted away in the water, and she caressed her chest. I wasn't killed, I almost suffocated to death. The man looked at her with a smirk on his face, his eyes shot at Yunsheng like a cold knife, and with a hint of a hoarse voice, he said in a gloomy tone, alternatively, you can choose to be killed by me. Although he said so, he did not attack her again. Yunsheng just lifted his eyes and looked at the man, his eyebrows and eyes cold and pretty. His narrow phoenix eyes were raised, and his amber pupils were shining with a cold light. Coupled with a tear mole, he was a bit more enchanted by evil. The nose bridge was high and straight, with a knife-like contour almost perfect. Even the pale thin lips made people unable to move their eyes. Such a handsome face made Yunsheng couldn't help but stare straight. After all, she always loved to see handsome guys. Have you seen enough? The man frowned deeply, realizing that such a bold and reckless woman was actually a flower lover. He couldn't help but sink down again, covering his exposed upper body. Yunsheng was scolded coldly by him, and the man's superior demeanor made her silently mutter a few more words, beauty misleads people, beauty misleads people. She cleared her throat and said, don't worry, I won't tell you about your murder. Your adult has released me a lot, as for just now. She followed the man's figure and looked down. The man gritted his teeth in anger and took a few steps back, afraid that the woman might do something else. Yunsheng coughed awkwardly and said, I'm sorry, you're so forgiving. If it weren't for you coming up and killing me, I wouldn't have made such a move. I thought you were with them to assassinate me, the man explained. Ha! It's not because I didn't get involved that I got angry and embarrassed. Chapter 3. I am Gu Yunsheng. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What kind of gaze are you looking at? The man looked at her with displeasure, and that gaze gave him a strange feeling. Yunsheng coughed and chuckled twice, it's nothing, I misunderstood. Hee hee. So why don't you kill me again, don't you treat me like a group of people who killed you? The man shrugged his shoulders, lifted his chin towards her, and curved his lips, saying, here, because the wound behind you is bleeding. The blood man who fell from the sky, killing me is enough. What? What? Yunsheng only then noticed that his clothes were covered in blood and there was a tearing pain on his back. She quickly and coaxingly clicked several acupoints to stop the bleeding and reduce the pain. She was suddenly thrust hard on her, but she didn't react and almost lost blood and died. It has to be said that she was quite lucky and had 3 ways of dying. Falling to death, drowning, losing too much blood and dying, none of which killed her. She is truly a cloud that cannot be killed. The man saw her skillful hemostasis techniques and became interested in her unique body movements when he first engaged in a fight. How could you, a girl, make yourself so embarrassed? With such skilled hemostasis, you've been injured, haven't you? Aren't you dedicated your life to killing someone? Upon hearing his suspicion, Yunsheng had to admit that this man had top-notch observation and analysis abilities. In his previous life, the organization of selling oneself often skillfully stopped bleeding amidst gunfire and bullets. In order to save his life, he even forced himself to study medicine. Of course, she couldn't say these words and only said, no, I have studied medicine and can be considered a female doctor. Just you. The man pursed his lips, his expression full of questioning. TSK, you still don't believe it? Yunsheng rolled his eyes silently, questioning her. She pulled the man's arm and felt his pulse. At first, she thought that at most this man could have some minor ailments diagnosed and proven, but she didn't expect to gain anything else. She was surprised and said, are you poisoned? Although it was a question, her tone was extremely affirmative. This poison has been in your body for so many years, I'm afraid you don't feel well even when it attacks every month, Yunsheng said confidently. Upon hearing this, Mu Jingyuan slapped Yunsheng's hand and took a few steps back to tidy up his messy clothes. With some questioning, he looked at her and said, do you really understand? Yunsheng nodded. She was proficient in all 18 martial arts, playing around in all 360 lines. She was the best woman in the organization, and these were all her routine operations. She blinked her smiling eyes and took a few steps towards him. Not only do I understand, but I can also detoxify you. Do you believe me? The man let out a cold snort, still feeling that she was talking big. Although she was diagnosed with illness, he had been secretly visiting several famous doctors for so many years and was helpless. The woman in front of him said she could detoxify her, which is ridiculous. Knowing that he didn't believe it, Yunsheng shrugged her shoulders and said, "It doesn't matter. I've been poisoned since I was born, and my stomach hurts every month. I'm not the one who feels like life or death and spits blood." After saying that, she narrowed her eyes and smiled at Mu Jingyuan. After listening to her description, Mu Jingyuan couldn't help but re-examine the woman in front of him, and surprisingly, she had all pointed out the symptoms of her toxic hair. The girl was dressed in tattered coarse cloth clothes, with a body full of scars and weak as if she would collapse on a gust of wind, but she could hold on and fight him a few times. Although embarrassed, his eyes were clear and he couldn't express any inspiration throughout his body. "Are you sure you can solve it?" Yunsheng curled up the corner of his mouth and waved his hand. "It's a small joke. Although you wanted to kill me, you saved me after all. I can work hard without any problem." She swam towards the other side as she spoke, slowly climbing up from the lake. Her soaked clothes pressed tightly against her body, outlining her seductive figure, but she didn't care. Her eyebrows and eyes were bright and delicate, like a painting. Even the bloodstains all over her body couldn't cover her flamboyant beauty. It didn't seem unbearable, but rather pitiful. She raised her hand and rolled up her wet long hair, her eyelashes trembling lightly. Yunsheng stood on the shore and looked at the man hesitating in the water. "I said you're a big man, but you still don't understand. I'll ask you a question. Ink is dead. You are also seriously injured now, so why don't you save yourself first?" "Don't save others before you die," replied Mu Jingyuan mockingly. Yunsheng looked at the wound on his body and found that it was no longer bleeding. Compared to the injuries he suffered in modern times, it was just a small scene. "I definitely can't die. Have you figured it out yet?" The man finally stopped talking nonsense and said, "You can give it a try." Seeing him agree, Yunsheng lifted his eyes like autumn water and looked at the man in the water. His originally pale oval face showed a beautiful smile, shining like a star. "Okay. I'm Gu Yunsheng. Remember to come to Kyoto to find me, and I'll help you detoxify." She waved her hand as she spoke and turned to leave. Leaving the man alone in the water, he picked up the discarded plain silver hairpin and pondered. Gu Yunsheng, the illegitimate daughter of Prime Minister Gu who was thrown into the countryside. His eyes piqued a hint of interest. Interesting. Chapter 4. Yan Wangye's Flower Path. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yunsheng, relying on his memory, returned to the place where Gu Yunsheng had lived before his death, which was in a remote village not far from 10 miles away. Gu Yunsheng was chased after being scammed out by Farmer Li Gang today, and this person must have colluded with her pursuers. Since she is already Gu Yunsheng at this moment, it is natural for her to bear the cause and effect of this identity. How can she survive? That's her way of life, Yunsheng. And she has never been someone who sits idly by, and what she believes in is not the inability to fight back or scold back. Yunsheng looked at the bright courtyard of the Li family at the village head, with layers of ripples in his eyes. She walked step by step towards the yard, and curses came from the small side room. "You scumbag, let go of me." A middle-aged man waved a short whip in his hand and cursed incessantly. There was still a leak of wind in the room, and a woman knelt on the ground, hugging a man's thigh. She cried sadly and weakly, "Where the hell did you do to Mississippi? Oh my goodness, what a despicable girl, Mississippi. Where did I go with her? If you keep crying and refusing to let go, I'll beat you to death." The middle-aged man stood with a grim expression and raised his short whip. A skinny little girl on the side quickly dragged his feet and cried to stop him, "Dad, don't hit me anymore. If you hit me again, I'll die." The man was not afraid after hearing this, but his gaze became even more fierce. He kicked the little girl in the chest and said, "Damn it. You're as cheap as your useless mother, you're just a servant's life. When I deal with her, I'll deal with you, you dead girl." Before the words fell, the whip was raised, but it never fell again. The man looked at the person in shock and said, "You're not dead." Yunsheng gripped the man's hand with a cold voice. "Sorry, I'm lucky," he said, casually placing the kitchen knife that had just been cut in the yard across the man's neck. "Dog thing, dare to put the knife on my head. If you don't want to live anymore, let me down, otherwise I won't kill you." The man not only didn't have fear, but also shouted even more. In his understanding, Gu Yunsheng was just a weak and gentle woman with no binding power. Yunsheng shook his head with a sigh and said, "You scumbag should have some understanding of your situation. If you're still so stubborn, do you know what path is waiting for you?" The man was stunned for a moment, only to hear Yunsheng's ethereal voice ringing in his ear, "That's the flower path that Wangye sent you." As soon as he finished speaking, a stream of blood spurted out from the man's neck, and in an instant, he lost his breath. Yunsheng threw the person to the ground in disgust, tidied up his clothes, and in the blink of an eye, he lifted the woman on the ground as if nothing had happened. The woman saw her coming back alive, tears streaming down her face. "Miss, I'm glad you're okay," she said, uncontrollably coughing and spitting out a mouthful of blood in the next second. Yunsheng leaned onto her wrist, showing a regretful expression on her face. She was exhausted and couldn't hold on anymore. "I'm fine, don't worry." The woman nodded reluctantly, as if she also knew that her life was not long. She reached out and grabbed the little girl's hand, saying, "Yuer, it's my mother who is useless. She can't protect you and the young lady, causing you to suffer so much. Miss, you'll have to walk your own path in the future. I'm going to meet my aunt now, and I hope she can forgive my incompetence." The woman coughed a few more times as she spoke, tightly holding onto Lilanue's hand as if suddenly remembering something. Her eyes widened and she said, "Jade pendant. Qin." Before I could finish speaking a few unclear words, I swallowed my breath. Yunsheng lightly stroked the woman's eyes, making her close in peace. Unfortunately, such a loyal person. She stood up and looked at Lilanue, who was crying uncontrollably and only 2 years younger than her. "Sorry, because I caused you to lose both parents. I even killed your father, and now I am still your father's murderer." Chapter 5. Legitimate Daughter Gu Yunman. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lilanue took a sniff and looked at Yunsheng, her eyes turning red. "What did Miss say?" "If it weren't for Miss, I'm afraid Lan Yu would have gone with Auntie now." "What kind of father is he? Kill my auntie, and then kill me again. Lan Yu just wants to kill him with her own hands." Yunsheng pursed his lips and patted her shoulder to help her up. In his memory, Lan Yu did hate her father to the bone, but 3 unarmed weak women couldn't resist a strong man. Lan Yu looked down at the woman and sobbed twice, "Auntie, you can rest assured to go. Lan Yu will also take good care of the young lady in the future." Yunsheng and Lan Yu moved the woman out of the room and looked back at the place where Gu Yunsheng had been staying for over a decade. The past was like a fleeting memory, and she murmured in her heart, "Gu Yunsheng, don't worry, I will definitely recover the suffering and torment you have endured over the past decade, as well as your life." She threw the spark into the house, and in an instant, the flames lit up. The flames engulfed the small house in the wind. "Miss, what should we do next?" Lan Yu's voice was mournful as she looked at Yunsheng. "First, bury your mother properly, let's go to Kyoto." Yunsheng and Lan Yu carried the woman's body and left. "What?" Gu Shao clapped the table and sternly questioned. "You're so confused, you're killing her in pain. Zhao Fangji's eyes flashed with a fierce expression and a face full of anger. Xiangye wants to call her back to the mansion, how can I be willing to do it? Did she forget to bring the evil Xiangye? Xiangye, don't blame me for being ruthless and letting her come back to harm the entire Gu family. Or can Xiangye forget that slut of the Qin family? She is rebellious Xiangye and wants to kill Xiangye. Gu Shao was burning with anger, pointing at Zhao Fangji for a long time without saying a word. Just then, Gu Yunman, with her delicate and green hands holding ginseng soup, pushed the door in, her figure graceful and boneless, and her clothes gorgeous. My father drank a cup of ginseng soup to calm down his anger, and my mother also fainted for a moment before confronting my father. She gave a soft and sweet smile, her voice gentle and obedient. Mother, my father must have his own intention to pick up my second sister. After all, my second sister is a descendant of the Gu family, so it's not appropriate for my mother to do so. Gu Shao took a few sips of ginseng soup and saw that his eldest daughter was beautiful, elegant, and innocent. It was only after being considerate and sensible that he felt some comfort. What Manner said is that it was indeed because of something else that brought her back for her father. Your mother's reckless move is afraid of causing trouble. Although she calmed down, Gu Shao still looked at Zhao Fangji with some resentment. Zhao Fang was furious and wanted to speak a few more words, but was stopped by Gu Yunman's gaze, so she had to swallow and stop speaking. If there is anything, the father should also explain it clearly to the mother. The father and mother are husband and wife, and when they encounter problems, they can solve them together. It also saves the mother from caring too much about the Gu family before doing anything out of line. Gu Yunman smiled and helped Gu Shao sit down, his tone soft and reasonable. Gu Shao sighed and said, there was a way to handle it, so there was no announcement. A few days ago, the emperor went to court and somehow wanted to marry Prince Ling. Upon hearing these words, Zhao Fangji also realized that the matter was not simple. Seventh Prince. Has Ling Wang, who has made outstanding military achievements, become a disabled Ling Wang? Gu Yunman looked at Zhao Fangji with disapproval and said, Mother, be cautious. After all, Prince Ling is a prince and not something we can discuss. Seeing Gu Yunman so knowledgeable and courteous, Gu Shao nodded slightly and looked at Gu Yunman with satisfaction. You should also learn from Manner well. You don't have any sense of stability as a housewife, he said. Zhao Fangji remained dumbfounded, knowing that he had been a bit reckless. Xiangye was right, it's my concubine, isn't it? Chapter 6. Named Legitimate Daughter. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Gu Shao shook his head helplessly and continued, Prince Ling has already lost his mother's consort, and his maternal family is far away from the border, with little influence and favor. Fortunately, he has been able to quell the war for many years, winning numerous battles and achieving remarkable accomplishments, and has only caught the eye of the emperor and gained some momentum. A few days ago, he lost a battle with the eastern desert, injured his legs and fell ill, and his face was also disfigured, and he has no connection to the throne. The emperor didn't favor him at all, but a few days ago, for some reason, he suddenly became concerned about Prince Ling's marriage. He said he would pass the coronation this year, but now there is no improvement. He wants to marry Prince Ling and find a queen to take care of him. Upon hearing his words, Zhao Fangji gradually felt uneasy. Is it related to the Gu family to marry Prince Ling? Gu Shao frowned and let out a deep sigh. The emperor said that I am now a left chancellor with outstanding abilities, and I believe the children I have raised in my family are also outstanding. So he gave me a starting point and said, I want to find one among the daughters of the Gu family. Even Gu Yunman, who had been clenching her hands and pretending to be calm, couldn't do it anymore. Her tone trembled slightly and she said, since the emperor hasn't mentioned which daughter of the Gu family, what is father's plan in his heart? Zhao Fangji quickly grabbed Gu Zhao's hand and said in a mournful tone, Xiangye, Manner is excellent and has been accused of being a heavenly noble person. You can't marry Prince Ling. Besides, Manner has a very good relationship with the crown prince. Maybe she will become the crown princess in the future. Xiangye, you can't sacrifice manner. Isn't there also Ping or Fu? Gu Yunman didn't stop her mother from saying anything, only by making her father understand her superiority would he not sacrifice her. I naturally know how good manner is, and I love manner the most. How could I just push her into the fire pit? Gu Shao said. Gu Yunman's worried heart finally subsided and he spoke softly, father loves his daughter, and the daughter feels sorry for him in her heart. However, since the emperor said these words, is the father planning to be the third or fourth sister? Gu Shao shook his head and said, Princess Ling, she can't be a concubine. The emperor has also said that she doesn't consider concubines. Besides, Wei heir is already foolish. If she sends Ping heir out again, Lu Shuang will be heartbroken to death. What my father said is true. Gu Yunman's eyes flashed with an unknown emotion, and he nodded in agreement. So, in this case, the third sister is not suitable, only the fourth sister is. Fu is not suitable either. Unexpectedly, Gu Shao once again denied it, and Zhao Fangji couldn't calm down in an instant. What's wrong? Now only Fu is left. Can it be that you feel sorry for your childhood sweetheart, Li Wangye, and are unwilling to send her daughter out? Wake up, Li Wangye ignores you every day in her small courtyard. You're really reckless. Gu Shao seemed to be stabbed in the foot and scolded her again. Anyway, I feel guilty to Wenqiu. If it weren't for Wenqiu, I wouldn't have been able to get out of that small village and marry you in my current position. As I've told you before, it's mainly because I can't be a commoner, I have to be a legitimate daughter. Gu Yunman stopped Zhao Fangji and said first, what my father said is that only manner is the legitimate daughter of the Gu family. If manner goes, manner. He burst into tears. Gu Shao felt sorry for her and quickly comforted her, I wouldn't let you go. My manner naturally wants to become the most prestigious woman in the world in the future, and Ping Fu naturally has other arrangements to pave the way for you. Isn't there also Gu Yunsheng? Gu Yunman's eyes flickered, tears stopped, and with a hint of crying, he said, what does father mean? As a father, it is precisely to bring Gu Yunsheng back. She was too young to enter the Gu family tree before, so bringing her back will be recorded under your mother's name. Naturally, she is also the legitimate daughter. Externally speaking, he is not in good health and has been taking care of his illness in the countryside. His aunt passed away early, which was already recorded in the name of his mistress. The emperor only says that an illegitimate daughter is not successful, and the true legitimate daughter is what kind of legitimate daughter she is. The emperor will not blame her, and Prince Ling is not favored. As long as her status is acceptable, it is enough. Chapter 7. Count Guangning's Mansion. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Gu Yunman and Zhao Fangji exchanged a glance, realizing that this was the intention to bring Gu Yunsheng back. Zhao Fangji looked at Gu Shao pleasantly and said, it turns out that Xiangye had such a plan. It was because of my foolish nature that I ruined Xiangye's plan. But now. Gu Shao gave her a displeased look and snorted, it's best for you to discuss with me before doing anything in the future, woman's opinion. Yes, I know. Zhao Fangji felt guilty and now he had to think of a solution for Gu Shao, responding repeatedly. Now we can only immediately send someone to search for it. It would be best if that girl is lucky enough to survive, otherwise you will cause trouble. After speaking, Gu Shao looked at Gu Yunman and said, Manner, rest assured that this matter will never involve you. It will be your wedding anniversary in a few days. Be well prepared and don't let your father down. Gu Yunman had a hint of pride in his eyes, but his face remained humble. Father, rest assured that he and his mother have worked hard for Manner. Grandmother returned from Qiantai Mountain that day, and Manner and her family had little to do. It was a big deal to welcome grandmother back. Gu Shao nodded admiringly at her and said, Father naturally knows this matter well. You don't have to worry about it, go down and rest. Yes, That daughter has retired. Gu Yunman bowed and walked out, leaving only Gu Xiao and Zhao Fengji inside. I'm also grateful that Manner followed me, otherwise I wouldn't have been led astray by you. As soon as Gu Yunman left, Gu Xiao complained about Zhao Fengji, with a hint of resentment towards iron and steel. Upon hearing these words, Zhao Fengji was unwilling and stood up. What does it mean to be led astray by me? Who am I working hard for? Manner is the flesh that has fallen from me, and my daughter is naturally the best among the best. If the Prime Minister dislikes me and sends me back to his mother's house, my mother's brother will never dislike me. You always take it back to your parents' house to talk about things. If you like it, go back. I can't stop you. Zhao Fengji's ancestral home is the Guangning Earl's mansion, which has been accumulated through meritorious deeds for several generations. However, since Zhao Fengji's father's generation, there has been no real power left, only a nominal name. When Zhao Fengji's brother arrived, he was left with nothing to inherit and had no job. In earlier years, Gu Xiao still respected Zhao Fengji quite a bit, considering that the skinny camel was bigger than the horse, and Guangning Bo was still an earl no matter what. Moreover, after entering the government, he was also managed by the earl's mansion of Guangning, which was why he lost his childhood friendship with Li Wenqiu and tricked her into coming to Kyoto to become his concubine aunt. But now that Gu Xiaoguan is worshipping the left prime minister, Guangning Bo, who has no power or influence, has long ignored him. He had had enough of Zhao Fengji's constant pressure on his mother's family, and the more he thought about it, the angrier he became. You have to go back. After Manner's funeral, no one will stop you. You just go back and live for a month or a year, it doesn't matter. I won't call you either. After speaking, Zigu stood up and shook his sleeves before leaving, unwilling to take another glance at Zhao Feng. Not long after Gu Xiao left, Zhao Fengji couldn't hold his breath and sent her close friend Yang Mama to inquire. When she came back, she asked, "How about Yinzhu? Have you heard about it?" Yang Mama quickly walked up to Zhao Feng and lowered her voice, "Madam, Xianye has gone to where Aunt Li is." Ah, Zhao Fengji felt unhappy in his heart, clenching his fists and gritting his teeth. Previously, the Qin family had provoked Xiang Yi to lift her. Does her daughter still have the honor of being a princess to accompany her? Qin's identity is not simple, and I can still understand Xiang Ye's thoughts to some extent. But now, why is Li Wenqiu such a slut? Countryside women have repeatedly driven Xiang Yi away without staying overnight, hasn't she? Yang Mama shook her head and said, "Madam, don't mention Aunt Qin's identity anymore. The walls have ears, and she is the good son that Xiang Yi picked up outside. As for Aunt Li." Chapter 8. Return to Return. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yang Mama sighed and said, "Aunt Li and Xiangye have been separated for a long time. Xiangye always sits down and stays up. Every night, Aunt Li unknowingly rushed Xiangye out of the hospital. I don't know what Xiangye said this time, but he stayed behind. What can I say?" Zhao Feng's hatred and resentment made her a bit irritable. But it's just a trick of playing hard to get. The country bumpkin who can't stand the stage, but the prime minister just eats her tricks and feeds her and the dead girl Gu Yunfu delicious and tasty. Seeing her say this, Yang Mama also let out a slight sigh to comfort her. "Madam, don't worry about the servants talking too much. The prime minister has now reached the position of left prime minister, and Madam has repeatedly argued and moved out of Guangning uncle's mansion. I'm afraid she has angered the prime minister." "Why, it's hard to say." Zhao Fengji sat down angrily and stood up to curse. "His climb to his current position is the credit of our Guangning Bo mansion. He is a poor and impoverished scholar. Otherwise, I would have taken a liking to him and let him get the help of our Guangning Bo mansion, without today's soaring." As Yang Mama listened to Zhao Fengji's voice grow louder and louder, she quickly stopped her and helped her into the dormitory. She asked her to sit in front of the dressing mirror and take out her hair, whispering, "Madam, you must not let Xiangye listen. You have forgotten how the young lady instructed Madam, trouble comes from the mouth. When it came to Gu Yunman, Zhao Fangji fell silent and pondered several times, feeling that what young mama said was reasonable, but Zhu, I am really angry with Xianye's current attitude. Everything he does seems to be a matter of business. Young mama removed her headdress and took a jade comb from the dressing table to comb her hair. Madam, it seems that there are quite a few descendants of Xianye in the mansion now, but think about it, besides the eldest son born to Aunt Lu, where are there any other men? She said as she walked over to fetch a basin of water to take care of Zhao Fangji's grooming. The eldest son is also a fool. Madam should not keep a grudge against Xianye and argue with him from time to time due to the matter of the second prince. The current plan should be to coax Xianye well and give birth to a legitimate son for him earlier. Upon hearing young mama mention Gongzi, Zhao Fangji's gaze flashed with resentment. Poor me, Manor hasn't even called him brother yet. Young mama was afraid that she would be sad, so she quickly said, if it weren't for saving the foolish young master, second young master wouldn't have. It's no wonder that it's all because second young master is so kind. Zhao Fang's eyes flashed fiercely. Gu Qi, that idiot, has caused my son to lose his life in vain. She said, thinking of Gu Yunsheng again. It's all because of that Gu Yunsheng, it must be because of her evil star. Upon hearing this, young mama choked up and couldn't say anything more. Did she say madam? You forgot that Taoist was arranged by us to fabricate, and besides, Miss Eyre had already been away for a long time when the second young master had an accident. She can't say that madam is the one who caused the young master to be foolish. This can also be considered as a case of retaliation. She cannot be said to be the most loyal and intimate servant of her own wife, so naturally her heart should be directed towards her own master. The next day, Gu Xiao woke up early and went to court, and Gu Yunfu finally came to the main house to talk to Aunt Li. As soon as she entered, she stuffed the pastry from the table into her mouth and ate it in large gulps. Why did Auntie leave father behind yesterday and not drive him out? Looking at Gu Yunfu, who was still young and somewhat naive, Li Wenqiu let out a deep sigh and said, your father said that the emperor has taken a breath and wants to choose the daughter of the Gu family to be Princess Ling. I'm worried it's you, and your father refuses to reveal who it is. So I can only keep him for one night. Chapter 9. Roasted sweet potato has a special fragrance. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Seeing Gu Yunfu tilt her head in confusion and look at her, Aunt Li smiled and wiped away the pastry foam from Gu Yunfu's mouth with a handkerchief. Wait for the small kitchen to prepare the food, little greedy cat will eat slowly, take a sip of water first. Gu Yunfu took the water cup handed by Aunt Li and drank it all in one gulp, still puzzled and said, isn't Ling Wang good? And Fuer's birthday hasn't passed yet, and she's only 14 years old after her birthday. There are 2 older sisters on the table, and 3 older sisters who will be 15 years old after the new year. How could it not be Fuer's turn? Li Auntie touched her head and said, you also know that in winter, you will celebrate your 14th birthday, and it's like a child's heart, not seeing you grow up. Looking at her, Li Auntie smiled gently and sighed, Auntie is afraid that if it falls on you, Ling Wang is not bad. It's just that the mother always hopes that you can marry someone who knows your heart and soul. Ling Wang looks like this now, and the royal family is that kind of place. If it's really you, you're afraid you won't be able to handle it. Gu Yunfu affectionately grabbed Aunt Li's arm and raised a bright smile. Fuer knows that Aunt is planning for me, but she also knows that Aunt doesn't want to see her father more. Aunt doesn't have to do things she doesn't like for her, she said upon hearing her daughter say this. Aunt Li felt a warm feeling in her heart. Isn't that big sister? She should be quite fond of getting married. Aunt Li sneered, it's not her. She probably doesn't like Ling Wang either. Your elder sister has a big heart, Fuer, remember not to have too much interaction with her in daily life. Yes, big sister has a bodhisattva face and a snake and scorpion heart. Auntie, you've said it many times, but does Fuer remember it? Besides, Fu doesn't like her either, it's extremely hypocritical. So, who did my father let go to? Is it really the third sister? Aunt Li shook her head again, no longer showing off. It's your second sister. Your father said he brought her back in the next few days and put her under the name of Madam. He publicly said that Aunt Li's early death was already recorded under Madam's name, but her health was not good and she has been recuperating in her hometown in the countryside. After listening to her aunt's words, Gu Yunfu felt a little uneasy for no reason. I left my second sister in the countryside for so long without asking, and now I have to take her back when I need her. Whoever goes to the countryside to take care of their illness, can that place be well taken care of? It's more credible to go to the village. Gu Yunfu's words were also reasonable, and Aunt Li's eyes were filled with a chill. Gu Xiao had already changed. Since he deceived himself, he has become a person who talks about interests in everything and spares no effort to achieve his goals. It's just that Fu is his child, so it's not easy to make the child feel cold about their biological father. Gu Xiao also loves Fu and she doesn't say much. After your second sister comes back, let's do whatever we can to help. After all, Aunt Qin has been kind to me. If it weren't for Aunt Qin, I might not have seen you born. Aunt Li said, sighing heavily, we don't have anything else, but we have a lot of money. Miss Eyre will definitely be in the most need of money when she comes back. I know everything my aunt said, isn't the small kitchen ready yet? Fu is starving. Gu Yunfu didn't pay much attention and replied, after all, she had never met this second sister before. Okay, I'll urge you. Aunt Li smiled. Miss, isn't it ready yet? Wait a little longer, it will be ready soon. Gu Yunsheng wiped the dust off his face, pulled open the mound of dirt, and handed 2 hot and burnt roasted sweet potatoes to Lan Yu. Chapter 10. Power is the most important thing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The two of them wrapped themselves in handkerchiefs and slowly tore open the charred skin. Lan Yu ate happily, exhaling and biting. Miss, how do you feel so different? Yunsheng's body froze for a moment, but she forgot that her personality was much different from that of the original owner. Perhaps Lan Yu, the little girl, was too pure to think too much about. She silently took a bite of the sweet and sticky sweet potato pulp, feeling a bit vague. Is that right? It's different, she said, Lan Yu blew her breath again and thought for a moment before saying, Miss used to be quite dull and didn't like to talk much. Now Mrs. temperament is a bit loose, it's strange that she's easy to get along with. The original owner should have always understood that he was the second young lady of the Prime Minister's mansion, with a noble status, but was abandoned in this countryside, and over time, his mood became depressed. Yunsheng thought, shrugged his shoulders, and took another bite. Since experiencing this life and death, I've figured it out for you, Mississippi. Whether it's a happy life or a difficult one, it's all up to me. Life is short, and it's better to live comfortably and efficiently. Lan Yu nodded in confusion, raised her face and smiled. What Miss said makes sense. She stood up with Yunsheng and asked, Miss, Lan Yu still has one thing she doesn't understand. You say, Yunsheng slightly tidied up his tattered clothes and gestured to Lan Yu to ask. Since the Prime Minister's wife has already targeted Miss, why are you still going back? Isn't this supposed to be delivered to your door? Why don't we escape? Lan Yu's words made a lot of sense, and Yunsheng naturally understood. Moreover, in her previous life, she had already grown tired of this kind of life, so she later started to play around and fish. But is it really that easy for her to run away or change her identity and start a new life? After all, his cheap father wanted to pick her up and leave her in the countryside for more than a decade, but suddenly remembered the deep affection between father and daughter. How could it be? It must be something that Gu Xiang needs on her. In this era, it's not like she runs away and everything will be fine. The Gu family will definitely look for her. Since it's not possible, it's better to take the initiative to see what they're up to. Hey Lan Yu, It's not that simple. Whether they want to kill me or do anything to me, as long as they want to move me, they naturally have their way. We are just an unarmed girl's family, they have power and influence. Since they have set their sights on me, it's not so easy for me to live a peaceful life. Escape, the world is vast and we can naturally escape. Maybe we can't escape. How can we survive if we escape? She knows some medical skills and can also defend herself with martial arts, but in this era, power is the biggest and most oppressive one. Yunsheng looked at the carriage in the distance, his eyes narrowed, with a hint of amusement in his eyes. Without saying anything else, he only said, "Here we go." "Hey, Gu Yunsheng, you can call Uncle C easy to find." The carriage was adorned with a Gu character pendant, and an old man with white hair lifted the curtain to look at Gu Yunsheng. His eyes were cloudy but he couldn't hide his cunning. He said as he got off the carriage and came to Yunsheng. "You're such a naive child. If something happens to the Li family, there's nowhere to go. Why don't you come to the county to find Uncle C? Uncle C can still ignore you." Gu Yunsheng looked at the person and took out a handkerchief to wipe the dirty hands he had just made while roasting sweet potatoes. "What does fourth uncle mean? Since you have already left Yunsheng to the Li family and are unwilling to take care of me, Yunsheng naturally cannot trouble fourth uncle again." "What are you saying?" The man who was called fourth uncle pretended to be angry and pulled up wrinkles on his face. "How could fourth uncle not be willing to take care of you? Don't say it's lost, it's just that you have a wild personality and are afraid of being confined. It's even happier to be raised in the countryside.